what is a magical girl, I guess, is the very first thing we're going to talk about. This is going to be more about what goes on sort of under the bonnet, as it were. So here we have our very first example of a magical girl, based on the idea that the women should conceal their power, and we have here Bubblegum in her traditional magical girl outfit. And of course, the main reason people like magical girls is because we take for granted that they are inferior. Of course, that's rubbish. We know that.
Well, that's good because they're awesome.
Yes, I mean the thing is, of course, that was from an article written in 1995, 2 months before Sailor Moon hit American television. People didn't really know what they were. So what is a magical girl? They're actually kind of hard to define in a lot of ways because there's been a sort of shifting definition over time. So, I mean, they started out in 1966 with Sally the Witch, and it was very much inspired by the American sitcom Bewitched. And it was about girls doing sort of witchy things without sort of getting noticed. They don't always transform, sometimes they do. They don't always fight, sometimes they do. So you've got like a lot of examples. So some examples from over time we've got like Kimitsu no Ako-chan, Little Witch Meg, Ojamajo Doremi, Fun Fun Pharmacy, Sugar Sugar Ruin, and Little Witch Academia. I mean, but of course in the 90s they sort of moved on towards sort of these sort of groups of girls, and it sort of became a lot more combat focused. Arguably, if you look at sort of Cutie Honey, I guess you could track it back that far in a magical girl time slot after all. There's a lot more sort of emphasis on sort of transforming into kind of battle costumes. So some big examples of that are going to be sort of Sailor Moon, Cutie Honey, Pretty Cure, Tokyo Mew Mew, and Revolutionary Girl Katana. I mean, I called this event Adolescence Apocalypse because an apocalypse is like a revelation. It's the not just the end of the world, but like the knowledge. It's a great sort of well, a revelation to yourself, a personal revelation. So I mean, there are other sort of like kind of arguments for subgenres like some magical thief, like Kamikaze Kaizo-Jan, Saint Tail, Stellar Witch Lips, or even like magical idols, where things get a bit more nebulous sometimes. But right, I think the thing is that Akiko Sugawa, who is a big sort of researcher on magical girls, sort of defined magical girls as being, this is where I've got to look up what I'm looking at. Yes, she sort of says that they are TV anime made for girls, which feature prepubescent girls with magical powers and are primarily designed for girl audiences. She was primarily writing about magical girls set between 1966 and 2003. So this misses out things like Nanoha and Malika, and sort of the onslaught of magical girl stories for adults. So really, I'd categorize things slightly differently. Rather than breaking things down by demographic that they are targeted at, I would suggest that a better example of a definition that sort of kind of rolls in everything together is girls who do magic, but it's a bildungsroom. So what is a bildungsroom? I mean, I guess I always remember, right, because it's a very good German word, I think of it as Roman wasn't built in a day. But yeah, so I mean, I'm sure some of you are familiar with some of these. So like, you know, examples of which are, if you've seen Dune in the cinemas, that's Bildungsroman. You know, Oliver Twist. In fact, that line from Kiryu Toga from Utena is largely paraphrased from Demian by Hermann Hesse. I can't remember whether I pronounced that right, never mind. But the thing about Bildungsroman is that it is specifically it's a coming of age story, but it's quite specifically about the maturation and moral, social, or psychological development of a young protagonist. So here are the kind of people that I'm going to be drawing from a bit today. I might watch this a bit, but we've got Akiko Sugawa, who wrote a thesis, well, like I was just saying, about magical girls and how they were sort of interpreted by sort of their audiences. And she's kind of like my pink leader. So. And then we've got Victor Tarnock, who largely sort of conceptualized the concept of liminality. I'm sure you're all familiar with liminal spaces online. We're not going to be talking about the backrooms today. Oh, okay, we might, slightly, kind of.
On my trip to the backrooms.
But liminality is kind of an overarching concept of kind of some moving between states. So you know, you know, as much as adolescence is a point where you're not really a kid anymore, you're not quite an adult yet. You that's liminal. That's liminality, and that can apply to a lot of things: marriage, death, sickness, health, like places. You know, like a car wash is liminal, but funny that. And then of course Arnold van Gennep, he was the one who came up with liminality in the first place, but he was like in the early 20th century, so I consider him my mysterious purple magical girl, I guess. So, first we're going to talk about settings real briefly. So, Akiko Sugawa points out that the importance of like Western influence as a means of like sort of challenging sort of Japanese gender norms. So you have sort of Western elements, like, which is why so many of them were sort of inspired by Western images of witches to begin with. And here in this slightly worrying screenshot is a shot from Little Witch Meg, which is set not in Japan, but in a sort of unnamed European city. It's quite, so that is what kind of allows us to kind of move away from just what, you know, expected ideas of gender and sort of move into this kind of foreign world. I mean, Akiko Sugawa says that the point of a Magical Girl series is to both reinforce and challenge gender norms. So in essence, like this coming of age, this Bildungsroman is going to be about sort of what things in society are good, what should I keep, and what should I not. And of course, some of them, they differ quite a lot. To put this in context a bit, I've got a quote here from Anne Allison's The Japan Fad in Global Youth Culture and Millennial Capitalism, and she says, as a 22-year-old American male, put this from a fan's perspective, what's appealing to American youth about Japanese cool today is this utter sense of difference. It could be Mars, I wouldn't necessarily go that far. But straight into the setting, but equally important is knowing that it all comes from a real place. So hence the fact that most of these magical girl stories are set within the domestic sphere. So you know, it is ostensibly Japan, most of the time. It's in sort of in your local neighborhood, in your schools, but you know that's why you introduce the mysterious aspect of kind of European ideas in the setting to kind of make this to kind of allow for these different ideas. So I mean, just for an example, like in ours in reverse, we've got Big Hero 6, sort of San Francisco, but like in Japan, where is this? Is this Japan? Yes, but, or like, here we have what appears to be a school from Yes Precure 5, which appears to be on the French-Japanese border. Or here is what appears to be some kind of castle cathedral, which is the school from Shugo Kao, sorry. You know, so a lot of them are sort of these between spaces, but, you know, sort of, they're westernizing, but, you know, quite to what extent you're kind of going is uncertain. Another example is like sort of Pre-Pyra, which is sort of set in a sort of theme park. I mean, a theme park is very limited in that you sort of, when you go in there, you kind of disregard what's real and sort of step into a kind of what could be real, maybe, I don't know. But Pre-Pyra uses that to sort of talk about sort of the ideas of utopia and what we would need to sort of do to sort of build them. And so a lot of the buildings from that is how to become the kind of person that can uphold this this sort of utopian ideal and sort of help it like not fall apart. And of course, I'd be remiss without mentioning Utena. The role of Art Nouveau being, I mean, Art Nouveau traditionally is about sort of form matching function. So in the case of this, is like in the case of form versus function. I mean, Utena wears the boys' school uniform because she wants to sort of meet the ideal of a prince. This is a sort of an idea of form matching function. But at the same time, the student council have their ideas about Himamiya Anthe and what she should be, and sort of they kind of form their image, and her image is kind of formed by what other people force her to be. I mean, or even if we go to the movie Adolescence Apocalypse, for which I perhaps slightly hastily named my thing after, like it's sort of the big motif is constructivism, which is based around this idea of kind of constant, well, revolution, the kinds of constant changing of things. Hence, this kind of this I mean, I wish I had a video now, but it's sort of shifting, it's moving. Or indeed, my favorite part, how much more liminal can you get than an elevator leading down to a morgue, which is also a confessional booth. And then on the wall we have a butterfly that sort of gradually sort of regresses into a caterpillar and then just a leaf. Now I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about like sort of early magical girls, like and what the role of transformation is. So a society, Victor Tanner said in one of his essays, sort of between. He said, a society's secular definitions do not allow for the existence of a not boy, not man, not girl, not woman, which is what a novice in puberty right is, if you can be said to be anything. A set of essentially religious definitions coexist with these, which do set out to define the structurally indefinable transitional being. So, I mean, in an ordinary sort of way, that would be becoming a teenager and sort of gradually making your way towards becoming an adult. But of course, to sort of, you know, the young viewers of most of these shows, that is something that, you know, you're not really conceptualizing yet. So we kind of wind up with this sort of halfway house, which is sort of a lot of early magical girl things involve transformation as a power. That was kind of a big thing in Himetsu no Aki-chan. And as you see, like, she's kind of like an adult version of herself, but like she would also sometimes turn into like a goldfish or something instead, or a witch, which doesn't look like her at all. Or here we have Hime-chan no Ribbon, in which case she is becoming the school principal. I mean, a lot of this is about a lot of this is about status elevation and sort of like experiencing what it is to have power. Like, it's not glamorous in this case. Do you want to be like the principal? Probably not. But like, it's about the experience of being an adult, or experiencing being in a different role that grants you like additional privileges over being a child, which is why it's sort of, you know, this is where it sort of fits in, where the buildings room and stuff applies a lot. You can't, because it's like, it's magical girls are in essence a sneak preview of adulthood. Like sometimes it's not even really that much difference. Like here we have Limit-chan turning into ever so like a couple inches taller, and what appears to be an air hostess, or I think an air hostess. I can't really tell.
It almost looks like they just moved the cells slightly.
It does, yeah. Yeah, no, as you go along, you sort of have a bit more difference. Like here we have Comet-san, and she had a sort of magical girl outfit of her own, but a lot of her stuff was still about sort of transforming, or sweet mint. But like, then you get things like Minky Momo, who, like, on top of like becoming, like, taking on a new job, this is where things get interesting, because she kind of turns into, it's not like she's just transforming into the school principal, she is transforming into, like, her idealized older self. She's becoming, it's a less abstract image. You're starting to see something where you, fumbling, where you sort of, this is what she wants to be, clearly. Not, like, outfit aside, this is what she wants to, this is the person who she is, who aspires to be. Or in the case of Creamy Mammy, again, it's a bit more abstract, but it's still, oh, she's kind of grown up, and it remains the same over the course of the series, because it's very much, the ideal of what she aspires to is a bit more concrete. I mean, early on you sort of see the introduction of characters, like this is Cub, who is probably the best example, the earliest example of a magical girl sort of mascot or fairy character, in the sense that they are the sort of her familiar as a witch. And so familiars kind of just sort of eventually sort of turn into much cuter things like Karo-chan from Five Sakura, but they exist to sort of serve as a sort of kind of point of what I would call communitas. Communitas is kind of, if you've ever been in the Scouts or the Guides, you might know what I mean. Like when you are part of like a social group that's all going through a sort of liminal process together. Like so, in that case, adolescence, but through the context of the Scouts. You know, you have like a bond with, or like a sort of social codes that sort of exist within precisely that kind of thing. Magical girls, because they were often sort of solo to begin with, often really didn't really have many characters to talk to. A familiar, or in the case of Karo-chan, there would be a lot more sense of there's a kind of bond there that you don't get with other girls, and on top of that, they also kind of act as the emissary for the power that is bestowing them with their ability. Of course, this didn't become quite as important once you started introducing sort of groups of magical girls, like sort of, Precure, Sailor Moon, and so on. Because, then you had you had kind of, I suppose, Spice Girls was mentioned to me beforehand. The sporty one, the brainy one, it was easier to come up with one that you identified with personally. But what was but of course, a sort of a fairy or mascot can't really fulfill the full, like a very sort of a complete communitas, because they're a small furry animal, you're a girl, nary the twain shall meet. So then therein lies the role of sort of rivals. So here is Non from Little Witch Meg. Like, they're not always, the role of the evil or rival magical girl is often from the building's Roman context, is to kind of serve as a sounding board for your own ideas, or wonder whether or not you're on the right track. So, granted, in the first episode, she does try to drown Meg with a giant fist made of water, but on the other hand, so in that case, we don't want to be like that. But on the other hand, in 4 episodes in, I think it was, she does ride a motorbike to save Meg from the burning building filled with puppies. So,
is the motorbike filled with puppies or the burning building?
Why not?
The puppies are in the building and then they are on the motorbike. I don't think they're inside the motorbike. Otherwise you wind up with a problem with a motorbike that runs on puppies, which further sort of solidifies the fist made of water drowning sort of concept further.
Would you consider her dynamic with Jorgal kind of the same as Superman and Lex Luthor? Like, Lex Luthor stopped being a villain more to be an adversary of Superman?
They're not always adversaries. I don't know enough about DC's or sort of superhero comics really to make a very good comment on that, though I'm sure there are examples of that being the case. But sometimes they can be used to explore other ideas, like in the case of Fate in Nanoha, there's a sort of, her whole thing is that she's ultimately abused by her mother, who sort of sends her out to go on these missions. And sort of it allows you to it's what, a magical girl could be under less fortunate circumstances, because a lot of them are from happy middle-class nuclear families. But yes, there's a lot of sort of discussion of what could be, or sort of, difficult backgrounds. I probably put too many pictures in here. But yeah, so Communitas is quite sort of beneficial. As you might have noticed, they all look quite like the characters that they sort of correspond with. Of course, one might go, Likun with Sakura he's fulfills that rival role, at least at the beginning, but the way they have Communitas is partly because they're both interested in the same boy, at least at the beginning. Nowadays you wind up with stories that try to flip the script and you approach things from the other direction. But
Absolute cinema.
It is cinema. I'm glad we're getting a season 2. But yeah. So let's go and start talking about groups. So you've got your Sailor Moon, your Ojomajo Doremi. I've seen these best described. Well, not Doremi, but this sort of trend of teams of girls who fight monsters. Described by, Hisashi Kagawa and Yoshihiko Umokoshi, the character designers of Fresh and Heartcatch Pika, respectively, as battle heroines, which just sums them up. There's a lot of lasers, a lot of punches. There's also but if you notice, they don't always sort of resemble the witch tree anymore. They sort of have their own motifs. Sometimes, but I'm flubbing pretty hard, but basically, what Akiko Sugawa Shimada outlines is a divergence into 2 narrative threads. So Arnold Van Gennep, when he came up with the idea of Liminality, he decided to have a big go at at the other anthropologists at the time, because they were convinced that when they were looking at initiation rites, they were looking at rites of puberty, and Arnold Van Gennep was like, how do we make sure that all corresponds at the same time? It can't. No one goes through it all at the same time. So he sort of delineated it into 2 ideas. The sort of physiological puberty, but also social puberty, which is the coming of age idea that we have nowadays, where it's more oh, you've grown up because internally you have become an adult, or you've reached maturity. And so you so the form, so when it comes to sort of magical girls and the battle heroine, there are sort of two narrative threads. Say the macro dynamic thread, which is sort of saving the Earth, and the micro narrative thread, which is what Akiko Sugawa describes as mothering and domesticity. So that's your chibi moons. You're taking, like, so many magical girls take care of babies, or it might be like running a cafe or running a forest, some kind of cute activity. But so we could, I kind of think that the microdynamic theme, this mothering and domesticity, is kind of mapped to the what Arnold van Gennep sort of kind of described as physical puberty, in the sense that the gender role is like, you girl, you're gonna be mom, you're gonna do flowers and woman, I guess. But like the realm of the saving the Earth narrative, the macrodynamic thing, social puberty is about the realm of ideals, what you believe in. Like, so, like, for example, like, sometimes you wind up with things like sort of big stompy boots or sort of tactical gloves. In fact, like, the tactical gloves are a touch of the unexpected. So initiation rites around the world, a lot of them involve kind of more sort of ambiguity for like people going through them. And in this case, so, you know, there are sort of kind of touches that go, maybe it's alright to have things that aren't quite so feminine, and that's why that you kind of see that factored in sort of designs at this point. There, in fact, there's my quote there. I forgot where I put that. But yeah, okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is rites of status elevation, which is what kind of an initiation rite is, right? When you become an adult, you have more power than when you're a kid. Unlimited power. But you know, so anyway, I've got to find my page for this because I will screw this up otherwise. So
Why 4 fingers?
yeah, so they're a bit different. Like, magical girls are a bit different to superheroes in that a lot of the time, you know, they have their power when they are transformed, but not when they're not, because they exist between this space of, you know, saving the world but being ordinary. And the thing is like, so when they transform, they sort of experience this kind of status reversal. Instead of being kind of subordinate to their parents and their teachers, they become the protectors of their parents and their teachers. So I mean, Victor Turner sort of contextualizes this kind of thing by sort of by talking about Halloween. Like when a kid puts on a Halloween costume, he's like, what do we got here? In Western society, the traces of age and sex role reversals persist in customs such as Halloween, when the powers of the structurally inferior are manifested in the liminal dominance of pre-adolescent children. The monstrous masks they often wear in disguise represent many chthonic or earth demonic powers, witches who blast fertility. Yeah. But of course, so in this case, power is sort of bestowed from like another source. It is often like in Heartcatch Precure, it's the heart tree, the tree that bestows everyone with a heart, or you know, or in Kamikaze Kaito Jan, it's literally you're the reincarnation of God, help God, which is kind of hardcore, I guess. But so in sort of fighting these sort of world-dominating forces, it's all about sort of becoming stronger than adults, and it's the point at which feminine sort of conventional, traditional femininity, sort of being quiet and submissive, kind of goes out the window, and you go, sometimes you just gotta throw hands. But of course, there's another form of sort of kind of status elevation that sort of takes you to adulthood that Victor Turner classifies as sort of, well, humiliation. There are a lot of instances of sort of kind of status elevation ritual that involve being humiliated. A good example is like, I'm sure if some of you have seen an American teen movie at some point, like hazing. Fun.
Carrie?
Yeah.
Again, how fonting?
Yes, sort of hazing, sort of bullying, sort of kind of forcing people into their place. And, you know, this does sort of form some communitas, like I said. It sort of does form camaraderie, like people who go through, like, suffering together go, oh, well, remember when we did that together? It's messed up, but it works. And it does sort of, and so eventually people do kind of accept you for this. But, like, it's the purpose of, like, villains, and, you know, saving the world is really more like a metaphor for, like, will you break out and become the person you want to be, or do you want to get kind of smashed into place? Kimiko Saito wrote an article where she sort of said, if transformation in the previous era signified empowerment by strength, the 1990s magical girls maximized their power by simply being themselves, cute and carefree students. Accordingly, there is little, if any, realistic connection between power and its wielder in the new magical girl trope. skipping ahead, given that cuteness is a concept associated with youth, passivity, femininity, and overall powerlessness, the recent brand of magical girls, cute battle heroes, is a sheer paradox of claiming power in powerlessness. I'm inclined to disagree, actually, because in the case, if we're sort of talking about sort of these sort of evil generals sending their monsters and sort of doing battle, and sort of kind of effectively trying to push magical girls back into their place, it's resistance just to be yourself and to not allow yourself to be kind of steered in a direction that you're unhappy with. And that kind of is what kind of the essence of magical girls of the 90s going forward to kind of roll into. I mean, here's the, sorry, I was going to say this is the domestic part, I guess, here. Yes, and here we have humiliation. In this case, sometimes it's represented as like semi-de-transforming. If you see, like, they've got beautiful dresses still, but they look weak. They don't, I mean, granted, a lot of magical girl outfits are sort of high heels and, you know, bracelets and things to begin with, but like it's clearly sort of more fragile. And like, yeah, sorry, I'm kind of going a bit off sort of script, but yeah, just to kind of sum up that kind of section, like two quotes that I think really do sum up this whole thing very well. A line from, admittedly, the Prince, who, admittedly, not fantastic, in Revolutionary Girly Tenor, says, never lose that strength or nobility even when you grow up. And that's kind of a motto that she like lives by in that story, because, and it's kind of the moral of the whole thing in a way. Like, and here we are, like, as Tosaka Rin says in the third series of Prisma Ilia, she says, well, in the beginning I thought she was just a child. She was such a simple child, bright and honest, who bathed up in normal happiness like was natural. Thinking back, what a cruel thing I did to a child like that. But Ilia always looked straight ahead in the end. She plunged into an uncertain future with no thought for her chance of success. It's a sentiment we adults have forgotten. That commonplace selfishness of an average little girl. Oh, I see. If there's any justice in this world that should be protected, it should be it would surely be the wish of a little girl sincerely pursuing the future. Oh wow, I'm still actually like I'm rushing ahead. Okay. I mean, but like yes. Okay, time to talk about these. The plastic. So many things, like everything I've ever read, like almost everything I've ever read academically about toys, accessories, and so on, they're like, you should just exist to sell plastic. Plastic, so expensive. But you know, a Japanese parent's babe and sort of, would you buy the new toy for me, mama? Horrible. But the thing is, like Roland Barthes says, like he was the guy who invented Death of the Author. For you know, shout out Roland Barthes. Yeah. All my homies love Roland Barthes. I'm not sure they do.
We're on the fence about him.
In the bath about him. Yes, so yeah, Roland Barthes says that all the toys one commonly sees are essentially a microcosm of the adult world. They're all reduced copies of human objects, as if in the eyes of the public, the child was all told nothing but a smaller man. A homunculus who must be supplied objects of his own size. That's weird, right? Like, but I mean, a lot of it's true. Like, he points out, like, a lot of toys are sort of like, you know, toy cars, or like doctor sets, things like sort of toy ovens, toy cars, you know, like, yeah, I know I said cars twice.
Chainsaws.
They do
That's
need
my favourite one.
Yeah, just so cool.
the legendary Lego orange transparent chainsaw, yes. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of, but the thing is, what I'd argue is that, what, if toys are a microcosm of adult life, what is this?
Yes.
What is it?
I'm actually unsure.
It's a wand. I mean, like wands, but the thing is, wands don't really exist in adult life. But the thing is, what it is, what it does. You filthy swine! Not intended. Get out of here. This is part of our children's media. Get out. But basically, what I mean is that this thing, you know, it's certainly in magical girl stories it doesn't do that, as far as I'm aware. But the thing is that
What you watch?
gushing over magical girls, maybe. But the point is that, like, I'd argue that they actually do something rather more complicated, and that they are actually sort of the tools of ritual. Because, you know, when a magical girl pulls out, like, an accessory, it'll be to transform, or to do a big laser, or something. And the essence of this is that, it's when they are exhibiting when they are enacting justice, and like they sort of will sort of be saying to the monster or the bad guy who summoned the monster what they've done wrong, what they've learned in the sort of the earlier, more domestic part of the episode, and then we'll sort of stretch and this is like it's almost like the kind of the coup de grace. It's like this way you're going, I know what you did wrong, you know what you did wrong, I've explained why you've done what you did wrong, and it's kind of like the kind of sealing that and kind of proving it. And so let me just they say the repetition of the bank is designed to condition viewers to appreciate and associate these products with the instant pleasure, the signals at the beginning of the release, functions in different multiple ways depending on the viewer's background. But that was a bit from Pretty Cure and the Magical Medium Mix by Brian Harry Hartstein, but like Victor Turner says, he's sort of equal, Victor Turner calls things like sacra, right? So articles of kind of ritual. And he says there are three components. Exhibitions, what is shown. Behold. Right? What is, number two, what is actions, what is done. Big laser, or transforming. And then you've got like, what is, and then number three, instructions, what is said. In the name of the moon, I'll punish you. So when you sort of put this together, you kind of get this kind of complete, kind of effective sort of ritual. And a lot of these tools sort of do correspond to what he's sort of noted about sort of initiation rite ritual, like tools from around the world. Like, for example, he says here, exhibitions would include evocatory instruments or sacred articles such as relics of deities, heroes or ancestors. Here we have Prisma Ilya dressed up as King Arthur, with the honest to God Excalibur in her hand. Or it could be musical instruments. Apparently that was a thing in the Illusion, in sort of the Greek mystery cults was a big kind of thing. Sort of tambourines, or that's not a weapon, but I wanted to include it because it mentions apples. Apples, fruit will become more relevant in a moment. Or indeed mirrors. So, you know, all of these things, a lot of these things are quite liminal objects. Fruit, rot, mirrors reflect the self. Like musical instruments are sort of an expression of the self. There's a lot so there's a kind of a reason why these things are kind of what they are, I suppose. I'd argue. I haven't talked to any toy manufacturers, so it's hard to really get a kind of solid idea. But a lot of the time the creation is kind of collaborative. They don't always have an idea in advance. So here we have Kamen Rider Guy.
Kamen Rider.
Yes. I feel like it's worth talking about this for a moment, because I have a quote here from an interview with Urbridge again, where he was asked, "Are you a Kamen Rider fan?" And he said, "Yeah, I am," which is why I was so confused when I saw the first mold of Gain. He didn't look like a Kamen Rider. I didn't understand the whole fruits motif. And they said, well, what are some jobs you've had so far? Because this was fairly early in development, and he said, it has to be the motif. Just look at the two previous writers, an astronaut and a wizard. You can easily make a hero out of one of those things, but an orange? From the start, I had to work with something that's not heroic at all. But that was my mistake, though. I saw it as a fruit. I realized I had to see it as a toy. The thing is that Victor Turner says, a striking feature of these sacred articles is that is often their formal simplicity. It is their interpretation which is complex, not their outward form, which is why you wind up with sort of simple-looking things like wands. And that's, so, you know, it's, in the case of, like, an orange, you know, it's easy, you know, it's all about the writer sort of building up the mythos around it. Like, like a good example would be in Heartcatch Precure, they have to, when they get the power-up item, the Heartcatch Mirage, which was the, this little mirror here, they have to go, like, on a sort of quest where they have to kind of fight their own negative self image in a big sort of like legendary hall full of statues of previous Precure. You know, it's about sort of building up narrative around it. But yes, I mean, you know, it doesn't. I mean, theoretically, you shouldn't even have to buy one of these because, as Akiko Sugawa notes in her thesis, She says there are also many cases reported in which girls who could not purchase the compact mirror from Himi to Noeko-chan, they secretly took out their mother's cosmetic compact instead and kind of ran off with them. Anyway, so how much time do I have left?
10 minutes.
A bunch! Wow, I'm zooming. So, I mean, an example of how like this kind of factors in, this sort of reflects on real life, is there's an essay called New Generation of Anime and Manga in China, Japanese Anime and Manga Changed China by Homai Endo, which I'm having to rely on Akiko Sugawa's translation for this, but she says, it says here of a group of girls in a Chinese high school, she made a Sailor Moon group of 3 among her good friends, where when a male classmate insulted them, they invited 2 more girls to join their group and confronted him, shouting, under the name of the moon, I challenge you. So, you know, here we have the buildings running in sort of kind of liminal prison full effect. This is having a real sort of impact on sort of real girls, sort of, you know, going through adolescence and sort of shaping that identity and like forming this sort of this group environment, but also sort of establishing their own identity for themselves. But yeah, okay. So now I'm briefly going to talk about monsters if I have time. I'm still not keeping up nearly as fast as I should. Okay, so think about monsters. Like here we have a cassette tape from Sailor Moon, and then we have our monster of the week, adult, behold, woman. And of course, her transformed form. She's turned into a bat. Bats, sound, music. Who have an idea? We might be onto something here. Maybe these things are connected. So when discussing monsters, Victor Turner says, much of the grotesqueness and monstrosity of liminal sacra may seem to be aimed not so much as terrifying or bemusing people into submission or out of their wits as making them vividly and rapidly aware of what may be called the factors of their culture. So, in other words, sort of when you have a monster, a lot of the time the purpose is to make you think of like an aspect of your culture in the abstract. So in the sort of domestic earlier portion of the episode, you'll have, you know, setup, sort of discussing an idea. I mean, Sesame Street does this even, but like then you kind of get then like in the latter half you have the kind of the dialectic sort of wrangling with this idea. So here we have Itsuki's brother from Heartcatch Precure. He is very worried because he's about to have an operation. He's scared of the operation. It's bad, but he can't talk about it. So he is visited by Sasarina, and so who appears outside the window and is like, what if you didn't have to? What if you just run away from it? It's not that bad. Just escape. And so she takes advantage of that to turn him into... I don't have to explain the symbolism here, right? Like, there's a wheelchair with a big, scary wheelchair man with a big body. And you know, the characters kind of like discuss the issue and why that, you know, not just what not to be afraid, but like the understanding, expressing the appreciation of the problem about what needs to be done, and it's only through that point, by doing this, that they're able to sort of triumph over his monster form and sort of return him to normal. A little quick here that I probably shouldn't have flicked out the web, but yeah. So yeah, the significance of this, you know, while significance is not always a thing, like the example I've given is pretty in-depth. Shut up, you. Pretty but yeah. But like, I mean, if you look at like the current era in Precure, like they deal with things a bit more in the abstract. Characters get turned into monsters, but they don't necessarily represent anything. But other characters have, you know, they do still represent issues a lot of the time that characters have sort of trouble with. I mean, like you can, like, just to take an example from like the end of Idle Time Pre-Pirate, like he's afraid of time stop. He wants time to stop, actually. So he wants time to stop. Hence, he is frozen and he has devoured an entire clock tower. But like, so therein lies the purpose of monsters, I guess. There he is when he's not full of clock tower. So I guess now, I suppose if I've got any time left, I probably don't. 5 minutes! With my 5 remaining minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of Magic Girls as I see it. Because Precure has done an interesting thing in doing 2 different series where the characters have aged up. Because, as it turns out, liminality is not like restricted to adolescence. like it can appear in like sort of entering the workforce, and or sort of again marriage, things like that. And so here we have two characters from Yes Precure 5, grown up, and in their series, like there was a bit of a shake-up because when they transform, they become their middle school selves again. What's going on? Why is it like that? Because like when you look at the currently airing Mahotsukai Precure 2, they're in university, but when she transforms into like a university-age version of herself. Akiko Sugawa sort of just explains, has a kind of an explanation, and that's sort of, like, I think, in that the concept of, the Japanese concept of shoujo is kind of in the name, Maho Shoujo. It kind of exists between the, it's a kind of dynamic that sort of suggests sort of kind of cuteness and immaturity, but it kind of lasts up until you come of age at the age of 20. These girls, they're in their 20s, they've hit that, they've overlapped it. I mean, you can argue that there's a kind of an element of sort of like nostalgia and sort of like looking back to your youth in search of new sort of ideas that will help you sort of progress in the present. But like, at the same time, admittedly, that's kind of where I think that's going. An alternate, but of course that's not like 100% like a given. Like, because currently, like a show that sort of recently come out recently, a long-running manga, Magic Lumia and Magic Girls Inc., has a far more sort of focused view, like about where they sort of transplant that sort of energetic, happy-go-lucky girl into the setting of entering the workforce and wanting to sort of build a sort of healthy startup. You know, so you can kind of transfer this kind of liminal idea into kind of other sort of realms. And I think, especially with the way things are nowadays, there's more and more of a desire to kind of adult, you know, media aimed at grown-ups that sort of takes on the imagery of sort of things for children, like "Don't hug me, I'm scared," for example. Yeah, but yeah, I can see this kind of potentially sort of extending into sort of other things. I mean, sometimes you kind of see a sort of a move into sort of, I'd argue, sort of magic that sort of deals with sort of the liminality of, well, death or sickness. I'm sure you could do it with plenty of things, although the one thing, I think the only form I can't think of really an example of what you would do would be retirement. I don't know. Like, I sort of struggle to sort of think about how they could all fit together. But there are there's, I think really, if I had to sort of give a prediction about like what sort of, you know, like one of the things I really want to sort of see come up in the future is kind of, I mean, Magic Girls a lot of the time are sort of introduced to sort of queer themes. I'd like to see them introduce like some more kind of down to earth, well, trans Magic Girls. That's like a thing I'd like to see. Like, you've seen sort of boys sort of become precure, like it's sort of rather officially now. But like the interpretation, like I've seen an interpretation of this by Kimiko Saito again, helpful as ever. I'm sure that the rest of her stuff, her writing is pretty great. But she sort of saw like the phenomenon of things like I want to be the twin tail or camphor. She says it's no longer uncommon to find stories about boys transforming into magical girls, a sort of empowerment desire realized by means of cross-dressing as shoujo. Calling this trend men's femination perhaps misrepresents the situation, however. The magical girl, as the epitome of shoujo, actually provides viewers the agency for heroic and independent identity against the failing image of male adulthood. To cite a magical girl manga, the deteriorating image of the paternal roles making it difficult to project a hero model on the male member of one's family. I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, I think it's the case is more like it's expressing sort of a kind of trans feminine kind of like aspiration, but it's like it's a lot of the time because these sort of have to be sort of marketable to you know, cis-het male audiences as well. You kind of wind up with a lot of kind of emphasis on well, fan service and so on. You know, like I mean, outside of magical context, like Onimai was a big thing like with that the other year. I think I've raced through basically everything, and I think it's about, yeah, it's 45 minutes exactly! Yeah, I'm estimated because like I feel like there's not a lot of sort of discussion about like sort of the kind of underpinning of how everything kind of fits together, and also I think whether it's sort of kind of you want to sort of, it's quite helpful sort of analysing and sort of piecing together whether or not something's kind of doing the job well or not. Do you have any questions? Oh yes, yes.
Can I say about the like trans magical girl?
Yes.
I like the idea of, well, only a girl can be a magical girl. and then realizing that you're a magical.
Well, that's precisely what I'm kind of looking for. This is the thing, and this is what I think is still sort of kind of lacking. Like, you've got, like, you know, there's a lot of, you know, gay themes in magical girls, and like sort of, you know, you have magical boys in the form of pure wing in Hirogane Sky Precure, and earlier in Haku Precure, you had Cure Infini, like, for a tiny moment, and like the idea that everyone could be a Precure.
I mean,
which I
He-Man.
think- What?
He-Man.
He-Man, yeah. I mean, like, these things do exist outside of just sort of Japanese context. Like, you can...
What I mean is like in an affirming way.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, it's a rule within the universe.
Yes.
Therefore,
This is the thing.
yeah.
You're entirely right. And that's exactly what I'm saying. I want to see coming is that I just don't see it happen very quickly. Like, because I feel like this is existing very much, you know, in the context of sort of adult male targeted magical girl content as it stands. And it'll be a long time before it sort of trickles down into sort of things like Precure, simply because, well, sort of understands of protecting the children, and besides that, like, I feel like you need to see it earnestly handled a bit more, like, handled a bit more earnestly in sort of adult targeted magical
So would the Sailor Stars fall
Yes.
into that?
Arguably, I will admit, I haven't actually seen that far into Sailor Moon yet, I'm sorry.
No, I'm used to where it's like,
Yeah.
it's like their secret identities are male characters and they transform into...
Is that more real then? Yeah, especially considering that the transformation sort of is usually used to emulate the idealized self. So yeah, absolutely.
So can we use this concept to argue that the movie Big is actually a magical girl?
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, but their buildings room. Like, I mean, it all fits into that big sort of buildings room and sort of mold. So yeah, that's why, like I said, sort of Freaky Friday area, because like there is that transforming into an adult kind of thing.
Now I can say Tom Hanks is a magical girl.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, whatever. I think that's about all I've got. Like, I was told I had 45 minutes, so I kind of speed ran through everything. If anyone has any more questions or wants to sort of say anything else, I'm here all the time, I guess.